In an old district of the city, 3 bandits approached children who were playing near the Catholic church and asked them where the priest was. The children didn't want to answer, apparently used to living in an area ruled by the bandits. However, the men insisted, using rough language. Then a girl came to the children's aid. She wore a bag on her head, leaving only one eye open. She tried to splash one of the bandits with dirty water, but he grabbed her by the hair. The girl couldn't handle the 2 brutes, but a passerby guy came to her aid. At first she pretended to ask for directions to the police station, then came back and drove the bandits away, who threatened to come back for the priest. The girl offered to show the stranger the way to the police station, but he already knew where it was. Hayan lived in an orphanage since she was 10 and spent most of her time reading books or online without having any friends. Even when she enrolled in college, she was always alone, and she told her brothers and sisters from the orphanage that she had many friends. She greeted everyone in the institution because she couldn't remember everyone in her faculty, but she didn't want to seem rude. She thought she could stay alone for the rest of her life. The bus in which the same lonely girl is sitting passes by the scene of a crime where a person was killed by a vampire. Many people on the bus were stuck to the windows, and a crowd gathered near the body on the street. The advertising screen on the bus warns not to go outside after the sound of sirens because vampires are particularly active at night. They also say that one should not engage in a fight with one of them because it can lead to certain death. Hayan is at karaoke with her classmates, hoping to make friends by drinking and relaxing with the others. However, no matter how much she drinks, alcohol has no effect on her. One of the senior students suggests they play a game to see if the juniors can outdrink him, and Hayan agrees. She easily drinks a large amount of drinks, and when the senior guy is already very drunk, she is completely sober. Then they start to show interest in her, offer to exchange phone numbers, and one of the guys offers to see her off since they stayed until night and the siren went off. Hayan doesn't know how to behave in such a situation. She feels very awkward because the guy is interested in her. They approach a bus stop where the girl should take a bus, and then they see how the same bandit who came to the shelter beats money out of some poor guy. Suddenly, the victim kills the attacker, piercing his chest through. This is definitely a vampire. The guy who was seeing Hayan off immediately runs away in fear, and the girl is left alone with a terribly strong creature. The vampire decides to make her like him, and she clearly has no chance of surviving. But suddenly her hair turns white and her eyes become bright blue. She turns into a vampire and kills the attacker. Hayan hurries home to make sure she didn't forget her father's gift there. In her basket of things, she finds a thorn crown and lets out a sigh of relief. She puts the crown on her head and falls onto the bed. At that moment, her transformation begins. Her hair color gradually changes from white back to normal, her blue eyes turn brown, and her long black nails, more like animal claws, become short and transparent. Park Hayan transforms into a vampire when she's agitated and unable to control her emotions. She blames herself for forgetting the thorn crown at home, as it's the only thing that helps her return to her original form. The heroine is worried that it has happened again and thinks about wanting to live like a normal person. At the university, Professor Pak Dong-yu noticed that Hayan was studying diligently after the lecture and approached her to praise her. The professor teaches the first year after receiving his degree at this university, and he is incredibly attentive to his students, knowing all of them by name. He was a legendary student himself, as he studied and worked 3 jobs at the same time. Now he is doing well and is going to become a father next month. Hayan respects him and thinks that she needs to study a lot to become like Professor Dong-yu. Hayan managed to make friends with her classmates, and after classes they asked her if it was true that she encountered a vampire yesterday. The heroine assures them that everything is okay. She didn't get hurt and escaped successfully. They talk about the guy who left her there alone and call him a jerk before continuing the vampire topic. One of her classmates says that out of 10,000 people, one can be a vampire, and then she claims that there might be 2 vampires in their college. They speculate that one of them might be in their class, and Hayan starts to get nervous. She says that she just has a stomach ache and tries to calm herself down mentally, thinking that there were no mentions of her in yesterday's police report. At the same time, other students are discussing an incident in which a vampire killed an entire family. They talk among themselves that with such rates, people may go extinct, that vampires are monsters and should all die. At that moment, Hayan freezes and remembers a snippet from her past. Heroine spends all of her childhood alone, watching her peers play together after school. Hayan, on the other hand, spends all her time with books, considering them her only friends. Every day, she prays to meet a friend with whom she can play and chat. And one day, a boy about her age approaches her, asking her about the book she is reading. They strike up a friendly dialogue. The boy learns that Hayan does not attend school and says that he himself would like not to go there. He invites her to the library together somehow and innocently laughs at the fact that Hayan likes to look at pictures in books. They become friends, and the boy shares with her what is happening at school and tells her things he couldn't tell anyone else. Hayan forgets next to him that she is a vampire. However, one day the friend comes to her meeting beaten up, and Hayan begins to ask him about what happened. The boy doesn't tell, and after that, they see each other less and less. Hayan gets angry with herself for the fact that the friend gave her so much, and she couldn't offer him anything in return. One day, Hayan sees a crowd of hooligans beating up her friend. They turn his backpack inside out, hoping to find money there, but he doesn't have any. The hooligans scatter his books and stomp on one of the books that Hayan gave him. At that moment, the heroine appears with a hood on her head and a mask on her face. She easily deals with the hooligans and drives them away, telling them not to mess with her friend. When the hooligans run away, the girl approaches the boy and takes off her hood and mask in front of him. She wants to explain everything to him and discover his condition, but the boy is horrified. He sees a vampire in front of him and begs her not to kill him. At that moment, Hayan's classmates pull her out of her memories and urge her to move on. One of the senior students bumps into her and behaves rudely. Hayan's friends tell her about this guy's reputation as a fossil, a term used for senior students who haven't graduated yet. They consider him a psychopath and say that he beats up younger students, takes their money, and smokes in a classroom. They also say he's friends with a professor from the senior high school, and that other students try to avoid him, so they should stay away from him too. Hayan's friend notices that this guy looks strange, and there's something off about him. Later that evening, the guy drinks several cans of water that he took from a random person, but says it still hasn't quenched his thirst. At the same time, he runs into several students from his university. They whisper to each other that he's from the 11th grade group. They ask if he's okay, but he's too absorbed in his thoughts and doesn't answer their question. The students hurry to leave, saying their bus will be arriving soon. The guy gets angry at their whispers. He blames his circumstances for not being able to finish school yet, as he's been searching for a job all these years but hasn't been able to get one. He thinks that some people are lucky, while others are not. Furthermore, he calls his life meaningless and feels like everyone is laughing and mocking him. But all of that doesn't matter anymore, because he received a fantastic gift. The psychopath stops by his car to look at his reflection with red eyes and fangs. A siren sounds. At that moment, Professor Dunju runs to his car, which is parked next to the guy standing. He calls him by name and calls him Pyongsu. The professor talks to him friendly and even ignores a call from his mom, saying he met a friend. But they can't chat this time because he's in a hurry to go home and suggests meeting another time. He's already sitting in his car and about to leave, but the psychopath blocks his way. Dunju asks him to move, but Pyongsu is too absorbed in his thoughts. In his mind, Ponsu calls Dunju a pig and believes that he got his good job through a bribe and that his girlfriend bought him the car. He doesn't believe in Dunju's success and considers it unfair that even someone like him managed to get rich, while he himself couldn't even graduate from university. Dunju honks and politely asks Ponsu to give way, but the psychopath instead sees Dunju laughing at him. Then he lifts the car with one hand and flips it, throwing Dunju onto the asphalt with it. The professor is injured but still alive. He coughs and asks why Ponsu is doing this, to which the psychopath replies that he shouldn't mess with him, as he has just started a new life. After this, Ponsu attacks Professor Dunju. The vampire who killed the professor remembers his past, where his mother was disappointed in him because he didn't bring in any money and didn't earn anything at his age. His employer was unhappy with how he performed his duties and was planning to fire him, while his friends refused to meet with him, citing their busy schedules. He decided to stop being called trash and killed everyone else. The professor is late for the scheduled meeting, while the auditorium is already filled with students. Hayan's friends cannot find her, and one of them has lost his mask somewhere. The vampire sneaks up to the auditorium, peeks through its gap, and bares his fangs, ready to tear apart everyone at the meeting and kill anyone who, in his opinion, had ever thought of him as trash. He bursts into the auditorium, but it is empty. Only a note is posted on the professor's desk stating that the meeting has been moved to another building. The meeting was indeed moved, but only to another auditorium, and no one knows who exactly moved it. Ponsu arrives at the abandoned college building where the note in the empty auditorium directed him, but there can't possibly be a meeting there. However, Hayan is waiting for him, her face covered by a mask. She tries to find out why the vampire killed the professor. and he honestly replies that, in his opinion, he was living too well and was unworthy of it. Hayan is furious, but she decides to give the killer a chance and suggests that he apologize to the deceased's family and compensate them. However, the man just laughs and asks the girl to remove her mask, but she responds that if the vampire finds out who she is, he will not live. The killer feels his superiority and hits Hayan with all his might, but the blow has no effect on her, which puzzles the vampire. Ponsiv hits the girl again, thinking that it is even stronger this time, and remembers his transformation into a vampire when a group of bloodsuckers chose him in some club to turn him into one of their own. They let him drink their blood and talk about how his life as a half-blooded vampire would last only 5 years, while he would be drinking the blood of the truck drivers he killed. They also note that his blood began to be absorbed by his body much faster than usual, and that the guy was completely insane. Hayan remains unharmed after the attack once again. The vampire doesn't understand how it's possible since he struck with even greater force than before, but then he notices that his fingers are broken. He screams in pain, and the girl asks him if he ever thought about how much pain the man he killed and his family went through. The killer confesses that he envied and didn't understand how a man born poor could live better than one born rich. The girl tells him that he's to blame for not seizing the opportunities given to him and removes her mask, revealing her face, meaning that the man won't survive. He seems to regret the murder, but after a minute he attacks Hayan again, reminding her that vampires have excellent regeneration. However, she stops the attacker's fist with just her fingers and tells him that she'll make sure he can't recover. She then twists his arm and throws him to the ground. Payan-su remembers the warning about another vampire with white hair from those who turned him. That one couldn't be looked directly in the eyes, and meeting such a vampire would most likely be deadly for a simple bloodsucker like him. Hayan embraces her vampire form and finishes off Payan-su. He begs for mercy and offers to compensate the professor's family, but the girl replies that he'll have to give up his life in that case. The vampire dies, and his body turns to dust. Hayan remembers her childhood friend as she looks at the killed vampire and leaves the scene of the fight. The police don't understand how to investigate the case when the body turned to dust and mention that it's like hunting a ghost, and only someone extremely powerful can catch it. A guy who helped Hayan get rid of the bandits appears on the scene. The investigation into the incident at the abandoned college building continues. A young police officer reports to his superior about the results, which are in fact non-existent. There are no witnesses or surveillance cameras on site, not even cars with dash cam that could provide any information. Only 2 witnesses, a boy and a girl, who were seen entering the educational building nearby, but both have alibis for the time of the incident. They simply wouldn't have had enough time to commit the crime and return to the building so quickly. Sonbi is angry with his subordinate and doesn't want to deal with the case because it has too many problems and lacks clarity. He blames his assistant for everything, and does this not for the first time, taking his frustration out on the juniors. Suddenly, a guy named Hwan Yun-tae appears behind them, whom they call the Ghost. He is the leader of a group investigating cases related to vampires. He praises the police officers for their good work, and notices the watch on Sonbi's wrist, honestly telling him that it is ridiculously expensive. He also points out that the strap is not adjusted as they do in stores, and that there is a slight scent of cologne, although detectives usually do not use it, and the time on the watch is set to Russian time, where a recently released criminal authority has just returned to his homeland. After all this, the guy added that this is only a theory and should not be relied upon, and then he left the crime scene. The students are actively discussing what happened on their college campus because the old building was destroyed and a murder occurred right next to it. This is already the second case of a vampire killing in this institution lately, so the students staged a protest against the administration's inaction. Hayan noted to herself that she should be more careful in the future. Her friends asked where she disappeared to during the meeting, but she just waved it off, saying she didn't feel well and went home early. Behind the group of friends, Hwan Yun-tae appears and invites Hayan to take a walk with him. He tells her about himself as the media portrays him, that he graduated early, has a phenomenal photographic memory, broke the record for arresting vampires, and that the list of his achievements is endless. The people around him admire the man, but the girl is nervous next to him. Yun-tae offers her to ask him any question, and she asks about what happens when a vampire is caught. He answers that it is quite difficult to kill them due to their fast regeneration, so they tie them up with an electric wire and then throw them into a furnace with a temperature of over 200 degrees. The girl starts to get even more nervous, and Hwan adds that he will definitely destroy all the vampires. They arrive at a small cafe and the detective is happy about the variety of food, as he hasn't eaten anything other than pork for a long time. The girl orders only kimbap and eats it slowly. Inte insists that she eat more and then accidentally cuts his hand, tempting Hayan with his blood. She holds onto a thorn wreath in her bag and tries her best to maintain her composure, realizing that this is a test by the detective, as vampires cannot resist the sight of blood and cannot eat human food. Inte wipes his blood and apologizes for the incident during the meal. He also reminds Hayan to eat the food while it's still hot and asks if she's the one who cannot eat such food. The detective finds it suspicious that the girl isn't eating the kimbap that was brought to her. He doesn't believe that there's a Korean who wouldn't like it. He also hints that it would only be possible if Hayan were a vampire, as they don't eat, but only drink blood and other liquids. The girl has no choice but to force herself to eat the dish. She compliments the food and says she's very hungry, wanting to finish her meal quickly. There's surprise on Yinte's face as he was convinced that Hayan was a vampire and wouldn't be able to eat. The girl feels nauseous in the restroom, thinking about how difficult it was to force herself to eat, but she had no other choice as she wanted to escape. The detective clearly intended to arrest her. She prays that she never meets this man again. But as soon as she steps into the hallway, she runs into Yinta again, realizing her hope was in vain. In her hands are 2 buns, and the detective asks if they are the same pastry sold in the cafeteria. The girl responds that she bought them for her younger siblings and offers the detective to try them, but he refuses. This pleases Hayan, and she explains her relief by saying that her younger siblings love bread. She is happy to say goodbye to the detective, but as she exits the college grounds, she encounters protesting students led by the class presidents. They force everyone present to cut themselves to prove that they're not vampires. They intend to find the bloodsuckers among the students that same day and hand them over to the police while they're powerless in the sunlight. Of course, the girl is horrified, and the crowd is also outraged, but mostly no one argues with this condition. Hayan doesn't know what to do or where to run. Then Detective Juan appears behind her, takes her hand, and intends to lead them out of this crowd of madmen, but they are stopped by the student council president, who tries to make them both take the test at the same time. However, Yinta points to the bloody bandage on the girl's hand, and Hayan is sure it's the same bandage the guy used to cover his wound when he cut himself while slicing meat. Yinta says they've already made the girl cut her hand, and there's no need to do it again. For some reason, this person defends the girl, even though he recently wanted to expose her. However, the president doesn't believe that the cut was real, as she could have already stuck a bloody bandage on her hand. Then the detective shows his ID and says that such actions by students are illegal, and they risk going to jail, forcing people to cut themselves multiple times in unsterile conditions. He adds that he is already investigating the case of vampire attacks in this college, and Hayan was about to help him with it. After that, he takes the girl away from there. The girl is already almost asleep with her younger brother and sister, who are peacefully sleeping, when she receives a message from the detective on her phone, saying that she can contact him if she has any trouble. She types a reply when the kids ask if it's her boyfriend who's messaging her. It turns out they were not sleeping, and Hayan tells them to immediately go to sleep and behave like normal children. She can't understand why Yinta keeps helping her again and again, but thinks that he must be a good person. Detective Juan smokes on his balcony and looks at Hayan's internet profile, thinking that he never thought he would meet a pure-blooded vampire like this. This is the end of the first part of this manhwa. If you want me to make a second part, please support me with a like and comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss new videos.